Well, here we go. We welcoming you in. It's the high school football playoffs preview show. I couldn't come up with a more original name. Jason Puckett with you, John Manley of the Tacoma News-Tribune, Todd Millis, ScorebookLive.wa, and the one and only Chris Egan from King 5. We're going to spend the next half an hour or so previewing the upcoming WIA football championships and the football playoffs they've got underway a week ago, but really in earnest get underway this week. We'll cover all of the classifications. We're going to go over the favorites, the repeats, champions, most likely to repeat, players to watch, and all the storylines, including where we'll start first before we get a proper introduction. Did the WIA get it right or wrong with their seeding? Before we get underway, Chris Egan, tell everyone where they can find all of your work and follow you on that wonderful social media app.
Well, that would be Chris Egan 5 on the X and on the Gram, Facebook as well. And you can join me on social media, and we could talk about Manley having his Christmas tree up already, and it's not even Thanksgiving time.
Yeah.
But I know we want to talk high school football, but I think that's another show for another time. Is it too early to have the tree up? I believe it is, but I'm one to talk. All I have behind me is a yellow backdrop. Chris Egan 5 on the X.
Don't worry, Egan. When you do your regular scheduled visit on Friday, we'll get into this. This will be a whole 45-minute discussion. John Manley with the Christmas tree in the background. Where can we find you? Where can people read all your work and follow you on social media?
Yeah, Manley_TNT on X. And by the way, Chris, I just want to say, for the record, this was not my decision to put this tree up this early. I was working. I was covering a football game, and I came home, 11:30 at night, and I saw the tree up. So the wife pulled it out of the garage while I was at work. She tried to blame our 3-year-old and said that he really wanted a tree.
Sure.
It was November 1st. I think the day after Thanksgiving, that's the day you put the tree up.
Wow.
But there's some things that are just not worth fighting over.
That's a good man. No reason to fight with the wife right now, Manley.
I warned you, Manley. Next thing you know, you'll have 18 pillows on your bed. So just be careful.
It's probably already happening. Todd Millis, where can people find all your work at?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to out my wife or my child on this show. So many hats, Millis. It's been my Twitter handle or X handle for years and years and years. And you can find our work under the SI.com umbrella / high schools, and just find Washington. We're one of the 50 states that SB Live touches down on. So, let's keep it rolling.
All right, hey, Todd, let me first start with you. I want to get into the seedings for the WIA, and we can use all the classifications. But just a very open-ended question for all of you. Let's go around the room. Todd, us first with you. What did they get right? What did they get wrong with the seeding?
Yeah, I have no problem with any of the top seeds. In fact, I think the top 3 seeds in each classification are pretty understandable. I mentioned on X over the weekend that if you want to get down to the small schools, in the 2B ranks, District 4, that's the Napa Vines, the Onalaskas, the Toledos, the Adnas, have been traditionally really strong over the last decade and continue to be. And so to watch an undefeated Asotan team from the Northeast 2B League as a 2 seed was a little surprising, but that's sort of nitpicking. What I like about this, Jason, is each year you're getting more and more of the right people on these committees. Yes, the RPI with Max Preps isn't the easiest, isn't foolproof. There's some tweaks that I wish they would make, and in terms of determining that particular ranking that they primarily want to be as a guiding tool, but with having the right people on the committee sort of balances that out. And quite frankly, I really, this is maybe the best year if you go from 4A all the way down to the 8-man classifications. I thought they did a really good job. The only one in large school when I just kind of rolled my eyes at was Lake Stevens being ranked ahead of Arlington in the 4A seating. Now, I'm not saying that Lake Stevens isn't as good or better than Arlington. Arlington beat them head-to-head by 2 touchdowns a couple weeks ago. but were co-champions. That's a 3-loss Lake Stevens team and a 1-loss Arlington team. And for Arlington to come out on the 8 line and Lake Stevens to be a couple spots up, I kind of took a second look at that and said, I don't know if I would have done that, but it is Lake Stevens. They're the 2-time defending state champs, so maybe they got a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there.
John, what about you? You concur with most of that, or is there anything else that sticks out that they may have gotten right, and most important, I guess, because we always like to point out the wrong. Were there any disagreements on your end about what?
I think they got the vast majority of it right. I think the committees do a good job and kind of weighing everything. I think, like Todd said, I was a little surprised to see Arlington as the 8 after the head-to-head win. In 3A, locally, I think I probably would have had Lincoln just ahead of Lakes. Lakes had just dropped a game to Mount Tahoma, who Lincoln beat, and Lincoln was undefeated in league. I don't think the non-league losses to Camas or Yelm were bad losses by any means. I think they were trying to schedule aggressively, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think you can really knock them for that. So I would have had Lincoln ahead of Lakes, but I don't think it's egregious or anything. And then I probably would have had Linden as the 3 in 2A, just because I think that league up there is better than the 2A SPSL, but I don't think they wanted to have all those teams on the same side of the bracket, so I see why they put Franklin Pierce ahead of Linden. So those are the ones that stood out, but I think all in all, a pretty good job by the committees.
Chris, Egan, you've been adamant that you did not like the Garfield Palouse seating, and you felt they should not have been lower than Elmira Cooley Heartline. Will you please explain why you were so ardent in that belief?
Let's begin, Puck, with they got it. I think Todd's right. I think this is one of the best jobs we've ever done, and it all starts, and I can't even believe Todd and John haven't mentioned, it all starts in the 1A with Royal. Originally called Royal Flats, founded back in 1956. They did a good job. They should be the number 1 seed no matter what happens. They should have had a separate bracket, in my opinion, where Tumwater plays Bellevue for the Washington State title. I would have loved to see that. Speaking of Bellevue, I think there was some concern out there, and I don't know if Todd and John heard this. There was some concern out there a couple weeks ago that Eastside Catholic may get the 4 seed. If they got that 4 seed, they would have been playing Bellevue in the semifinals. More than likely, these guys still have to play the games. In my opinion, I've watched Bellevue 3 times this year. They're one of the best teams I've seen. But I think they got it right. They put O'Day 2, Eastside Catholic 3. They have Bellevue as the 1, and I think Lakes is the 4 seed in that one. So that will be interesting. I'm going to tell you the one I would have changed, though. Number 9, Enumclaw, and number 8, Kennewick. And here's my reasoning on that. Kennewick does not have a hog trailer that they bring the offensive linemen out on, and they do in Enumclaw. So, in my opinion, what's a better home game? Well, it's always great to go out to the Claw. So, just for that alone, I would have gave Enumclaw the 8 and Kennewick the 9 because Kennewick does not have a hog trailer.
Hey,
but otherwise,
I've seen enough F-150s and F-350s and 450s out in Enumclaw. I think they could probably haul that hog trailer over east of the mountains if they really were inspired to. So,
take them over there, and you know who's also heading over there, John? The Puyallup Vikings heading to Chiawana country, and that's going to be. I know it's coming up, Puck, but there's my upset lock of the week right there. The Vikings pulling off a thriller. But
it's a shocker. It's a shocker. You would pick a team from Puyallup to pull off a shocker.
Todd's shaking his head already. But, no, I think they did a really good job. In all honesty, I love the fact that they have a committee, that they talk about these things. I wish they would do this, honestly, in all the sports because as a parent, I've seen some draws, and you're like, why are the 8 best tennis players all in the bottom half of the draw? Yeah. And it takes a committee like this where you could sit down and just kind of break some things out, and I think they've done a great job. I appreciate the time and effort that goes into this. So, in the end, yes, I see Arlington. Maybe they should have snuck up a little bit, but I'm with Todd. I think Tom Try and his 2 state championships are the reason they got the 6th seed there.
Hey, Chris, before we pivot to some of the games, I mean, you travel around every week to the big game of the week, right? We have you on every Friday, and you singing the praises of those schools that you're going to. I mean, this is kind of a bittersweet time, right? Because it's winding down. Winding down, and then it's over. What has this year of high school football been like for you, of all the different places you've traveled to?
Well, I'll say this right out of the gates. I think our first one was Olympia Capitol, and the place was packed to the rafters. There wasn't an empty seat there, and you got the feeling early on. And I'd love to hear from John and Todd on this. You got the feeling early on that the COVID years were past us. That the crowds were coming back. At least in the games I was going to, the students were having fun again. The teachers were kind of like, okay, we're back. And I saw that for most part every Friday night. I mean, I think the next week we went up to Lake Stevens, Bellevue. That place was packed. And 2 weeks ago, guys, I saw one of the greatest performances by a student body in high school history. And so when people say, oh, the glory days are gone, well, then you weren't at Sumner 2 weeks ago for their homecoming game. They had a homecoming parade through downtown. The place was sold out. There was fireworks. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. And so I think high school football is doing better than it's ever done. I credit people like Todd and John for keeping it out there, because we need more people reporting on it. We need more eyes on it, because you know what? There's some good stuff, and there's some good football being played as well, too.
Todd, you want to start with, we go lower classifications, you want to go right to 4A. Todd, dealer's choice, you get a pick. What would you like to do?
Well, hey, you brought up Royal, Chris, so let's just start right there.
Okay.
And they get a bye this week, so we don't really have to talk about them. Wiley Allred and his group get to go scout and bale hay and, whatever they do here in November. So, yeah.
All right, so go to the 1As. Royal and the 1A, they are the clear-cut favorite, right, Todd? Royal?
Yeah, like Chris said, they should be probably in their own classification. I got a chance to go up to Royal. You hear about Royal, and you hear about, they're up on the plateau, like you said, the flats. I got to go to one of their home playoff games a few years ago, and you're just wondering, well, what's it like watching a football game at Royal? More importantly, what's it like to watch a visiting team come out in Royal's stadium? And I got to watch Kings there, and Kings was a very good football team that year. It was in the state semifinals. And you just don't see, maybe when Butch was coaching at Bellevue, there was a little of this, the kind of the intimidation factor, but you just watch the visitors come out on Royal's home field, Jason, and they just kind of look at Royal in their black uniforms with the gold trim, and they kind of go, we don't have a chance here. Like, it's not just the legacy. They're wearing the legacy. And Wiley just sits over there. He's the nicest guy in the whole world. He's the most down-to-earth, great coach you will ever meet. But there's just something when that team comes on the field. I saw it with Eatonville in the state championship game. Every time I've seen it, I don't know if teams believe that they can beat Royal. And that's half the battle. And so they get on the field, and Royal just kind of fills them out. And then all of a sudden you look up and it's 35-0. They do it very methodically. Again, I've seen more athletic 1A teams in my sports writing career than Royal, but I've never seen a team methodically go about breaking down an opponent and breaking down a game like Royal. It is fascinating to watch. There's a reason why they're the 4-time defending state champs, and they're the clear favorites to win 5. Although there's a couple teams that have been playing well. Our Coug, Jason Gesser, and his boy down at Seton Catholic, I know that they're hungry and they've reloaded. And there's a team in Tacoma that John and I have both seen. It's coached by Herschel
Dennis.
Dennis.
Herschel
I'm going to
Dennis.
call Herschel McGriff. My gosh, what am I doing, baseball? Herschel Dennis, who's the all-time winningest football player in NCAA history at USC. He's here trying to build Life Christian into IMG Academy, but they are really, really talented. So there are a few teams that, athletically that I really like that might be able to give Royal at least a game for a half or so, but I just don't see anybody beating this team.
That will be fun. That Live Christian, I think, is going to be taking on Jimmy Shapiro, a Frosty Westering protege, wide receiver for the Lutes in their national championship team. I think they got Kings in the first round, so that's a 1A battle. And Manley loves this one. Cascade Christian, Linden Christian. It's a Christian battle right out of the gates in the 1A. That's going to be a fun one as well.
You see it play out the same way, John?
Yeah, we talk every year about 1A, and then Royal just beats everyone by 100. So it's almost like it's not even worth discussing. I remember that game a few years ago, Todd had mentioned, when Eatonville had that great team, and Caden Jumper was there, I think, Todd, and all these guys. And you thought, I think we'd picked Eatonville, and then, Royal goes and beats them by 50. So it's just like, until someone shows me otherwise, I kind of think it's Royals to lose every year.
Okay, I want to give the lower classification some love because we don't talk about them. I know a majority of this is going to be talking about the 4A and 3A, but John in the 1B, the number 1 seed is Liberty Christian out of Richland. Who is the favorite in your opinion coming out of 1B to win the whole thing?
You know what? I'm going to defer to Todd on the lower classifications. We don't cover a lot under 1A, so if he's got some thoughts, I'll let him share.
Todd, who do we got? Who's the favorite out of 1B? I see Nia Bay. Hold on, Todd. I see Nia Bay, and all I think is every time I went to the Tacoma Dome for years and years and years, when they played all the games on the same day, and it was Nia Bay kicking off at 11 o'clock in the morning. Nia Bay's throwing 75 on somebody. I mean, so who's the favorite coming out of 1B?
Hey, we've seen all the 8-man. We've seen all the 8-man dynasties. Jason and Chris. Yeah. We've seen the lacrosse Washtucknas and the Odessas and Nia Bay's run and stuff. Liberty Christian's really good, and they beat Nia Bay earlier this year. And the one question about Liberty Christian is can a team that throws it around the lot, that's full of athletes, can they play a physical brand of 8-man to beat a Nia Bay or a Wilbur Creston Keller and they did. And so, and then they've just sort of taken off from there. Liberty Christian's probably the most balanced team in the field. Wilbur Creston Keller has 2 really good players back from their state runner-up team last year. But Nia Bay's got Tyler Swan. And the Swan name up in Nia Bay in basketball and track and wrestling and football, I mean, it's everywhere. And this is the latest one. He might be the best all-around football player in 8-man. He's a big fullback. He's one of these guys that he hits you and he hits you again and he hits you again. But he's got 1,500-yard rushing ability to go along with Jodell Wimberly. They've got maybe the best 1-2 rushing attack in the state. And then my guy, Kevin McNulty down at Nassau, they've been kind of knocking on the door and making a run. And they've got the best quarterback in 8-man football who's coming off an injury. And so that what's different this year, Jason, than maybe in years past where they've maybe had a dynasty team like a Liberty Bell here the last couple of years is there are 4 or 5 teams that can go win it this year. That's kind of what makes the 8-man classification very exciting this year.
I love 8-man football. If no one's ever seen it, when I was in college, we used to call 8-man football. It's so much fun. It is so much fun to watch. I know, Egan, I know you love your Wilbur Creston Keller.
Well, I was going to say, Puck, it's like Groundhog's Day every state championship Friday or Saturday. And I feel like over the last 23 years, I just always remember saying the name Nia Bay. So my pick would be Nia Bay after that. I'm trying to do my best to get FME, Fife Milton Edgewood, downgraded to a 1B school. I would like to see them make a run for the money. But when you get 3 cities going after one title, you get a little more power behind you. So
let's jump. Hey, John, let's jump to the 2A. I see Tumwater, and how many Ottens are on the Tumwater team?
I don't think there's any Ottens this year, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. But I think 2A, I kind of think it's a collision course for Tumwater and Anacortes to meet again, like they did last year. Anacortes beat them handily. I think that goes differently. Whether Anacortes wins or not, I don't think it's a blowout this year. I think Tumwater's vastly improved. They have blowout win over 4A Puyallup, a win over 4A Eastlake. So I think they're well deserving of the number 1 seed this year. So that's kind of how I see 2A shaking out. I think Anacortes has got a good path, and then Tumwater is potentially going to have to see a Linden in the semifinals or an Archbishop Murphy. And you look at Anacortes and it's Franklin Pierce, who that power T that's a nightmare to defend. It's kind of a cousin of the wing T, very deception heavy, but it's almost exclusively 90% run. So that'll be a challenge, but I just don't think Franklin Pierce has seen an offense as explosive as Anacortes is. So I would say Anacortes Tumwater for a rematch for the 2A state championship is my initial read on that bracket.
Todd, man, when you look at the 2A bracket, I mean, you're in our age, bracket of 40 years old in that 40-year-old group. John, I don't know if John, are you in your 40s yet?
33.
Oh, no,
not quite in the
40s. Jesus. I grew up with these names, right? Todd, listen, if everybody knows high school football and knows the Otten name and knows Tumwater. Then you look at Seaholm back in the day, Linden back, Archbishop Murphy's been one that's come on here recently, but Prosser. I mean, these are some teams that have just old school in this classification. I know maybe they probably have been up and down, but are just familiar names. And when I looked at the 2A bracket for the first time, I'm like, God, it's the same teams that I always remember. Linden, Seaholm, Tumwater. It looks to be a pretty good bracket.
It's the legacy classification, Jace.
Yeah.
And some of these teams, geez, I remember when Tumwater was the big, in the big school classification. I know Linden's bounced around. Prosser's beat Bellevue during their, they beat them. They upset Bellevue during their run of many state championships. So, and they're now all congregated in the same classification, which kind of makes the Anacortes story really, to me, one of the best I've seen in 30 years. And we talked about it before, where 5 years ago it was on death's door. They didn't have a varsity program. They were playing an independent schedule to try and revive the program. And lo and behold, this wonderful group with the Beaner brothers and they had a really good quarterback last year, and it's incredible what they've done in 3 years and been able to maintain. And they've got a really good group coming behind the senior group. So for them to beat Tumwater like they did last year and be able to maintain it, and I agree with John. I think both of these programs are on a collision course again. Tumwater's better, Anacortes is better because all those guys are back and they're a year older, but Tumwater's better than they were last year because I think their offense, they can do more things. They have a legitimate pass game in the wing T. The interesting thing is, if they play again, will Tumwater play a man-to-man? And I don't know if anybody can defend Anacortes straight up, but I think Tumwater might try that again because they have a couple new guys and maybe a better cast there in their secondary. But that's what would make the matchup here in a month at Husky Stadium, if that happens, very fascinating to me.
Hey, Chris, we talked a lot about that Anacortes storyline. Just where the program, Todd talked a little bit about, alluded to it. You can share more on it. Where they were at the championship last year, the crowd that was at Husky Stadium to root them on. I mean, the whole town was there. And then what was one of the coolest scenes that I can remember is when they came back home with and how the entire town welcomed that team back with their buses came in. I mean, you've covered a lot of great stories over the years of covering high school sports. That has to be right up there.
Yeah, that was a special one, and Todd hit it. This is a program that was I don't think they won a game for like a 5-year span. They had a year where they didn't play varsity football, and they wanted these kids to get the winning culture back. And so I think when the JV team finally beat Linden, they felt like they were heading back in the right direction. They were getting more kids in the weight room. More kids started turning out. And then last year, to make that, the year before, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I think they lost a heartbreaker on the road. And then I think it was at North Thurston maybe. But then to win that state championship last year, Puck, you mentioned the crowd. Out of 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A, the biggest crowd at Husky Stadium was there to watch Anacortes. I mean, I'm sorry. The biggest crowd was there to watch Anacortes. That place was packed. And, yes, they got on the buses, and this is so cool. The late, great Alan Reed and I headed up to Anacortes to do a story on that team, and they were 4 to 5 deep on the sidewalks as the buses rolled into Anacortes that night. People honking horns, cheering. I mean, it felt like Remember the Titans, them coming home after the state title. It was a goosebump, feel-good story. Todd mentions the Beaner boys. They're two of the best in 2A, two of the best in the state right now. So they are going to be, in my mind, one of the teams to beat. I went to that Archbishop Murphy game that they lost. I think that was a good loss for them because you can learn a lot from a loss, and a loss can make you hungry. A loss can show you that you make turnovers in a game, you fumble the ball, you throw interceptions, you're going to lose. And I think they learned a lot from that Archbishop Murphy team. That Archbishop Murphy team is very good. I think they have a chance to knock off Linden and make a run as well. But, yes, it all comes down to Tumwater. They are the team to beat. I mean, John wrote about this Puyallup Vikings team being pretty good. They went down to Tumwater week 1 and literally got humbled beyond belief. And Tumwater's done that to pretty much everybody they faced this year. So it's going to be interesting. But you know what? I'm throwing it out there right now, Puck. It's going to be Chicken and Joe's on me at the 21-21. If Franklin Pierce can make a run and win a state title, that is going to be a party at the 21-21 Tavern, and I'll be there celebrating Franklin Pierce, some of the great alumni there, you know, Dar Looker, Carl Liram, the list goes on and on. Chris Swanson, a proud Franklin Pierce grad. So, you know what? That's an exciting story as well. They got the 3 seed. It's going to be fun to watch them play too.
Do they make the margaritas on rocks with the salt for you there at the 21-21, or how does that work?
Puck, at the 21-21, do not ask for a margarita. Rainier beer, Chicken and Joe's.
Well, what do you order then? Do you bring your own, or?
I go with Rainier beer there. Yeah, I do that.
Let's get into the 3A. I'm going to ask your favorites in a second, but I'm just going to go through the first round matchups. You got the 11th seed Central Valley against number 6 Lincoln. It's Monroe, the 14th seed, against the 3rd seed Eastside Catholic. 10th seed Mount Tacoma against probably one of the best stories. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. The 7th seed, the Decatur Gators. The 15th seed Mercer Island against O'Day. Federal Way and Roosevelt. Seattle Prep and Lakes. Enumclaw and Kennewick, the battle of 9-8. And then the 16th seed Stanwood against number 1 seed Bellevue. John, what's the most intriguing first round matchup at the 3A level in your opinion?
I think it's the 7-10 Decatur Mount Tacoma. Like you said, great story. Decatur, I think for the first time in school history, is in the state tournament.
Wow!
And they've done it with great defense, and their quarterback Spencer Holloway has played well. And then they're getting their star running back who's missed most of the season. He's back right in time for the postseason. So, but I think Mount Tahoma's playing really well right now. Todd and I watched them the other day just take it to Mount Spokane and run the ball down their throats. And they got a Division I recruit, a wide receiver, corner, Elijah Durr, who made some explosive plays. And I kind of felt like people had written them off too early in the season when they got off to kind of a slow start. They were replacing a lot of seniors. But, you know, I didn't think that team last year got to the 3A state quarterfinals by accident. I think it's a good program. I think Keith Terry's a good coach. So it didn't surprise me that they kind of started to figure some things out. Some things fell into place, and they're playing as well as anybody right now. So I think that 7-10 to me is really intriguing.
Todd, what about you? What stands out in that first round matchup in the 3A level?
Yeah, there's 2 of them, and John touched on one of them. I think, Keith Terry was pretty excited, and like John mentioned, the Decatur story is kind of like the Anacortes story. They'd never won a league championship, Jason, in football. I mean, in the 90s and 2000s, when they were playing in the NPSL, they were always picked at the bottom and backed that up every year. They've had many winless seasons, and they've had this group come through. They beat Enumclaw in week 1. They beat Federal Way, kind of in a miracle finish. And they've done it without Nehemiah Washington, their best running back, who has been out most of the year and just sort of played linebacker. Now he's going to get back to playing running back. But with that being said, they don't have a track record in the playoffs. They're not the deepest team in 3A. So I think Keith Terry was very excited to draw Decatur even on the road in that 7-10 matchup. I think that's a game that I think Mount Tacoma is the favorite. I think they're the team to beat in that matchup. But Decatur's proven me wrong time and time again. They're going to have to do it one more time because I'm picking Mount Tacoma to win that game. And then, you talk about the damn, the horse trailer or the bison trailer or whatever they have up there. Hog
trailer.
Have you ever been to Lamson Stadium? Have you ever seen the locker rooms there? That's like coming out of a hog trailer. Come on, man. So Kennewick has their own version of it. No, that's going to be the black and blue game of this first round. Enumclaw is still physical. Mark Gunderson played at PLU. He just loves watching his team just beat on people. And that's how Randy Affolter coaches his Kennewick team. This Kennewick team is the one team that I've seen when they've gone head to head, with the exception of Yelm, that they actually welcome playing the Bellevues. They welcome playing the O'Days. They welcome playing Eastside Catholics in the state playoffs. They'll come over and play them anywhere on the street, Memorial Stadium. And they've had a pretty good level of success, and it's always been low scoring, hard hitting. Randy Affolter kind of coaches that way. And now maybe the 2 black and blue teams of the classification are playing each other in round one over in Kennewick, and it should be a really fun first one to 20 wins type matchup.
I thought about that, Todd and John. There's going to be a lot of F-150s on the road heading to the Tri-Cities. You have all of Puyallup heading to Chiawana, and you got all of Enumclaw now heading over to Kennewick. So it's going to be a fun one. And, Puck, I'm going to break it right now on this podcast. I'm going to let you know right now that John and Todd mentioned it, but our King 5 big game this week will be, for the first time ever, the Decatur Gators will be the big game of the week. It's their first time in the state playoffs. I grew up going to the SeaTac Mall, so I love any time I can get over to the Fed. I don't think the Squire shop is still open, but I'm excited to watch these Decatur Gators. I don't know if Roberto Bergeson is still playing for the Gators, but if he is, he could be a threat. Watch out for him. But I agree with them. That is going to be, in my mind, the big game. And Enumclaw Kennewick is going to be. That could be a battle down to the final play. Well, otherwise, you have some. I mean, let's just be honest. The 3A, can anybody find a way to beat Bellevue? I mean, what we talked about this, Puck, earlier on one of your podcasts. If you have offensive linemen and defensive linemen in high school, you are tough to beat, and they have some of the best O linemen in the state on that team. And it's going to be interesting to see if anybody can try to figure out how to beat that team. I don't know. I've watched them. I'm not quite sure how you do.
Can anyone? Well, your opinion, you don't think so, John and Todd. You guys, can anyone beat them? Who can knock them off in the 3A level?
I don't think so. I think they're the best team in the state, regardless of classification. They got a couple Power 4 now. Power 4 kids on the line. We got a really good running back, Warren Moon's kid in the secondary. They're just stacked. I felt like at the beginning of the year it was them and then kind of O'Day and Eastside Catholic hanging around there as the only teams that might have a shot, and those are the top 3 seeds. So I think that's kind of played out, but I think it's Bellevue for sure.
Now, before I answer this question, Jason, we don't forget we got a lot of passionate 2B fans in this state, so let's not forget to talk about them.
Did I bypass 2B? I thought we covered 2B.
I think, Todd, that was you and Jason in your own podcast. We're going to break down the
we'll get to the 2B,
with the Okanagan Bulldogs and Carter Kuchenbuch, who's going to talk about guys that can find their way around a hog trailer. He has his own ranch there, and he's the quarterback tight end that's going to Boise State. But anyways, to answer
my money's on Friday Harbor.
Friday Harbor. Okay. That's a long shot. They're 1,000-1 to win this week. But to answer your question, can somebody beat Bellevue? Yeah. I mean, I saw East Lake up 2 touchdowns on Bellevue earlier in the year. It was the only real. I mean, Lake Stevens had a close game with them too, but that was the only game where Bellevue was kind of in trouble. And in the second half, they got rolling and they ended up kind of blowing them out. They have the most firepower. Can O'Day and Monty beat Bellevue? Absolutely. If they control the clock, get a lead, and play that style, that ball control style. Can Eastside beat them? Yeah. Can Roosevelt beat them with all that? With all those, Sam Adams players? Yeah, they can. I don't think they will. I don't think anybody will, but they can.
Well, if Paulo Bancaro comes back for O'Day, and you get both the brothers out in the field, Todd, there's a shot there.
His younger brother is a wide receiver?
Is it Leo Bancaro? Am I saying that right? Leo?
Yeah, he's a big, tall receiver on the left side. And actually, this is the year, because they don't have a Jason Brown in their backfield. I mean, they have a nice story on a kid that's kind of a baseball player first, and has had a really good year running the football. But they don't have a Jason Brown. I mean, Eastside Catholic's got a better running back. Roosevelt has a better running back. Bellevue has better running backs. But the one thing that they have been able to do is they've taken more chances in the pass game, and it's Banchero's brother's a big reason why they've done that. They also have a really good tight end as well, but they've been able to throw the ball and hit on some big plays this year. And Monty, I think, has been more apt to live with maybe some of the mistakes, a couple of interceptions, and stuck with it, because he knows in the playoffs when you're playing an even Steven type opponent, you gotta be able to throw the ball, especially when you get behind. And that's the one thing with O'Day being 9-0 right now is they have not been behind at all this year. They've gotten the lead and they've taken it the distance. So, but they are a very intriguing team. They're a lot better than I thought they would be at the beginning of the year.
Well, and you know them, Chris. He has a quarterback approach 10 passes. He starts to shake a little bit. He starts to get like this little tick. He can't allow that. He sees a guy get up to 8-9 pass attempts, and it's like, let's go right back to lead, dive, and sweep right away.
I'm actually curious to get John's take if Lincoln beats Central Valley and Eastside Catholic takes care of Monroe. I think that's an intriguing matchup to me, is that Eastside Catholic Lincoln game. I mean, I remember being at that game a couple years ago. I think G. Scott was a tight end. It was that Eastside Catholic team and it was a back and forth battle. And I loved it when the Lincoln crowd started chanting 2-5-3, 2-5-3. And then somebody started yelling, like, half the players for Eastside Catholic are from the 2-5-3. So it was a good little battle.
What do you think of Lincoln's chances, John, from a team down in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I remember covering that game also, Chris. I think Julian Simon, who went on to play linebacker at USC and kind of got buried on the depth chart, but he was playing for Lincoln that year, and they had a really good team. I think that was the semis, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
That matchup, but yeah, I think Lincoln's has improved as the season went on. They took a couple non-league losses early, but I credit Masaki and that staff again for scheduling aggressively, because I think that you take a couple losses, but it benefits you. And then when you run into an Eastside Catholic, you're prepared for games like that, and you've played at Camas already, and you know what good teams look like. And they have one of the best young quarterback recruits in the state in Sione Cajo, who's got a really good arm. They can run the ball. They're balanced, and they've been playing good defense. So I think that would be a good game.
And I just realized what's going to happen with this podcast, Buck, is all these high school kids are going to just use this as bulletin board material. They're going to like Monroe right now. You guys hear what Egan and Manley said? They're already looking at Lincoln Eastside Catholic. Let's take him. So this podcast is going to be.
We'll do the college game day. We'll put all the picks up, and then they use it later. Todd, you brought it up, and I think it's one of the intriguing storylines, at least on the 3A level, and especially if they continue to advance, will be the Roosevelt Rough Riders. I mean, is a team that has been, largely on the football scale irrelevant probably since Hugh Millen played there, and Hugh Millen played in the 70s, for God's sakes. But now that they find themselves, they're a very good football team. It has been a squad that has been put together by a lot of transfers. I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, where are we at currently with is there an ongoing investigation by the WIA into Roosevelt? Where do we stand with that?
Yeah, so a few weeks ago at the executive board meeting, the WI announced that it was going to assign a fact finder, because I just in Washington State, everything kind of goes up the chain before it gets to the state level, and so by the time it had gotten to the second district level, to the board of district athletic directors, there were some questions that had not been answered, and they brought some people into from Roosevelt to answer the questions. I don't know if they got the answers they thought they would get. So at that point, the WIA executive board said, okay, we're going to assign a independent fact finder, somebody that's not associated with Metro League or that particular district, the Sea King district, to go in and just see what's going on. Now, the problem with that is, a fact finder has to get, they're the ones that are trying to schedule all these appointments to sit down and talk to people. And so a lot of it's the cooperation of, it's a lot of it's in Roosevelt's hands. So if they're like, hey, I can't do this right now. The WI has conceded this is something that might go well past the season. And then the WI will look at it and say, okay, hey, they did nothing wrong, or, hey, we need to look into some, I don't know, sanctions or whatever. But I think at this point, you're going to see, if something comes down on the Roosevelt situations, it's going to come retroactively, much like the Bellevue situation a number of years ago when they had a couple state championships taken away. I don't think you're going to see it before the Gridiron Classic. So, But right now, we're still in the independent fact-finding stage with the adopted fact finder, and then that kind of goes as long as it takes them to get some cooperation.
But in question here, Todd, for those who are listening to this and watching this, they may have no idea what's going on. This is in regards to what? Illegal recruitment, kids transferring into the school that shouldn't be transferring in? That's at the heart of the issue, correct?
Well, I think what started the WIAA involvement is if you're a school and you feel like you're having any athletes, being recruited, you have to file an official complaint with the WIA. There's an online form that you fill out, and once somebody does that, then the WIA gets involved. That particular school or that particular district has, I think it's 30 days or 15 days to respond, and then they do their own self-investigation. It's a very long, drawn-out process before the findings get back to the WIA, and that's what happened a few weeks ago. Everything kind of played out. And then they were just trying to get everything cleared. And then the WI executive board said, we're not we don't have all our questions answered. So that's why the fact finder was assigned. So, but yeah, I kind of know who the schools are. I don't know if that's, I don't know if it's good to out the 2 or 3 schools that officially filed complaints, but that's what got it started in the summer and for the WI to get involved.
Well, it'd just be an interesting storyline. I mean, Chris, I can't even, I'm just trying to go off the top of my head. When is the last Seattle public school win a state championship? Like, has there been recent memory, Egan? I don't know. Can you recall one? But a public school.
In football?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm drawing a blank.
What was it, Rainier Beach or Garfield? They were in the state championship, 10, 12 years ago?
Maybe.
It's been a while.
There was because I bring this up because when I was growing up, and there was a rich history of high school football in the city. Garfield and Franklin were good programs, like really good. There's the Corey Dillons of the world and Mario Bailey. These guys were talented football players.
How about your Ballard team there with the big running back that went to Wazoo? They were mean.
Yeah.
For a few years too. Yeah.
It's been a minute. Obviously the private schools have had success. So again, to wrap up 3A, this is Bellevue's to lose, right? We're all in agreement on that one?
I would think so, but with echoing Todd, I think Monty and O'Day, they can get them there. Eastside Cat, anything can happen with those two, but I think it definitely is Bellevue's to lose, in my opinion.
Let's go to the 4A level. It's just some heavyweight matchups. I don't know. You guys tell me. It seems like this 4A level is wide open. John, how do you see the 4A playing out?
Yeah, I think it's the most wide open bracket by far. I think number 1 Camas is the favorite, but I could see any number of teams winning this thing. You go through, and even Chris had said earlier, Puyallup is the 14 seed. And I think they have a legitimate shot to win that game. I don't think they'll necessarily be the favorite over there. That's a really good Chihuahua team, and it's always a really hard place to play. But if you're even in the discussion of the 14 beating the 3, I think that shows you how deep and talented this year's bracket is, the parity. You're looking at it. Camas, down here, Sumner, they could have had a case to be the number 1. Keith Ross is one of the state's best defenses this year. That Arlington Graham Kapowson 8-9 game, that's really intriguing. Leighton Martin and AJ Tuivasa, kind of a quarterback battle matchup in that one. Kennedy Catholic has a really good team. Indiana Jones is the running back, and that is his real name, by the way. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife, versatile option for them. They run a little wing tee and spread. They're a problem for teams. Gonzaga Prep, Meade. You look at all these teams. It's a really intriguing bracket. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how it shakes out.
Todd, what stands out to you in the 4A bracket?
Well, we all know where the power is. It's in 3A. And then the two powers in 2A, and obviously Royal and Okanagan in 2B. What's different about this year as opposed to maybe the last few years is I don't think they have that unbeatable team. When I watched Lake Stevens at the end of the year last year, I'm like, how can you beat this team? and everybody gave their best shot, and it was met with, get off me, shrugged off. Camas, like John said, Camas is probably the favorite. They're probably the most complete team. But I think Sumner's right there with them. Lake Stevens, yeah, they've had some bumps and bruises and bumps in the road and with their passing game and a bunch of young guys with Colton Matson, the quarterback, the Gatorade State Player of the Year, and Jay Sean Lamar, the really good running back, the All-State running back. But they're capable because Tom Try is as good as there is in getting people and exploiting defenses in space. But you could just go down the list. I mean, Gonzaga Prep with that triple option, really tough to deal with. This is Chiawana's probably his best team, Scott Bond's best team since he's taken over the last 4 or 5 years. Meade, big and physical, maybe the biggest line in the state. I mean, you just go through all these rosters. John mentioned Graham Kapowsin, maybe the best underclassman quarterback in the Northwest. I mean, everybody has a reason to have some hope in this bracket. And I didn't see that last year when Lake Stevens was going through, or a couple years ago when Lake Stevens and Kennedy, or when Graham Kapowsin had Josh Wood and they beat a nationally ranked team in the state champions bowl in Las Vegas. I didn't see that, and I'm seeing that now. And like John said, it's wide open. It would not surprise me if it's Emerald Ridge, Puyallup, Chris Egan, coin toss in Husky Stadium. I mean, color me not surprised if that happens, okay?
Egan, who do you think you're going to be interviewing December 7th at Husky Stadium?
Well,
the victorious team.
What John and Todd said there, I mean, they nailed it. I mean, this 4A, I think, is exciting. It's fun. And you look at these teams, and then you start looking at the coaches as well, from Try to Boehnert, to I mean, just this place, these teams. Keith Ross is – I talked to Keith Ross, and we had a moment before their game against Emerald Ridge, and he says, "You know what, Egan? Some people don't like me, but I'm here to make these kids better football players, and I'm here for these kids, and it's all about discipline." And John mentions their defense; they fly to the ball. The Sumner Spartans just fly to the ball, and they had a right, in my mind, to possibly be a number 1 seed. Camas, yes, they should be the 1 seed, but Sumner was another possible number 1 seed. But then you take that Sumner team, and then you look at this Puyallup team. This Puyallup team went into Sumner and almost beat them there. And they're the 14 seed. And that's why this thing is wide open. That's why this thing is so much fun, because I don't know where we're going to go. I mean, my gut thinks this could be the year finally for the Spartans to get a state championship. Keith Ross has put in over 2 decades with that program, and it would be fun to see that. Yes, my wildest dreams would be a Puyallup ER state title championship with the Vikings bringing home that title. But, I mean, first round GK against Arlington. You have arguably one of the best teams over the past 5 years in GK taking on an Arlington team, which may have one of their best teams of all time in the first round. So, I mean, it's going to be crazy. And who knows? Maybe Parker Mady, now that he's got his scholarship, maybe he can somehow go down to Camas and rip up those paper makers, and Curtis can get out of there with one of the biggest upsets in the first round. But it's wide open, Puck. I don't know where to go. My gut says somehow Sumner gets out of it with their first title of all time.
Todd, does Richland just keep wearing the lucky, what is it, the gold pants? They have these lucky playoff gold pants that they wore last week against Yale.
Yeah, so that was part of their original uniform in the 70s and 80s. And when Lonnie Pearson was there about 20 years ago, he said, "You know what? We're going to just wear these for big games, and it's usually playoff games." So
awesome.
They've really adopted the gold pant thing, and if they keep wearing those whites over to the west side and getting wins, they might sleep in them. So
yeah. Does Bothell still have the golf cart that is like a DJ that like bounces up and down like on hydraulics? Egan, you would know this. Do this?
Can't stop that blue train. Woo, woo.
Yeah,
they got that.
That thing is unbelievable.
The crowd is absolutely awesome. Here's the deal, though, guys. I'm going to throw this out there. We did a prep zone on Mercer Island cross country. They win state titles, and yes, we kind of pick who we think's going to win, but a lot of times they come through. The prep zone we did this year was on the Coleman Brusa brothers from Kennedy Catholic. Did not mention them yet. These are two big brothers, two nasty brothers. And when you get in the playoffs, you have size, you have depth on the O-line and D-line. Good things can happen. So let's also not forget that number 4 seed, Kennedy Catholic, Coach Jones. Yes, you got Indiana in the backfield and the Coleman Brusa brothers blocking the way and sacking quarterbacks. That could be another interesting pick in the 4A.
Hey, Todd, before we go, Colton Matson, has he landed on a school anywhere playing college football? No,
he hasn't, and it's still as perplexing in November as it was when we had this conversation in August. He had an experienced group around him and had a fantastic year. Sure. He's had a good year this year, but he's had some ups and downs. So he needs to get hot and show that, what we all know. He's the best quarterback in the state of Washington, and they're certainly capable of it. But Chris, great point. The Coleman Brewster brothers might be the single biggest matchup problems in the whole bracket. If you have not seen these brothers, I watched them up at the Arlington Pass Camp. They did a lineman relay. They have a lot of fun with the linemen up there as they do this 7-on-7 tournament. And to watch those two brothers hand off a football and run around a track, I'll tell you, man, I bet you they're under 12 seconds, and they're that big in the 100 meters. It's pretty impressive to watch.
Two of the nicest kids you will ever meet. Puckett, one is already the oldest brother is committed to the University of Washington. Everybody's coming after the little brother. Will be interesting to see where he goes. I think Todd is a D lineman, I believe, his preferred position. But and these are guys. I said, "What's your favorite meal?" And they go to Wingstop and they get 40 wings. I said, "Is that for both of you?" They go, "No, that's 40 each." Chris, we put it down.
That's unbelievable. All right. You know what? To all three of you, you guys have just another season. I'm in awe of watching and reading and watching again all your stuff and listening to you guys talk all year long about high school sports. You guys do such a great job. Be proud of all the work you've done. John Manley, just terrific work down into the Tacoma area. You can follow John on Twitter at Manley_TNT. Todd Millis, Scorebook Live, Mini Hats Millis, and of course Chris Egan from King 5. And of course you can follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Egan 5. You guys done a great job. I know it's a lot of hard work. I mean, you guys, a lot of Friday nights, you guys are gone away from your family and eating fast food and pulling in at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, but keep up the great work. We need more coverage of high school sports. It's fun. I think all four of us love it. So I know it's winding down, but congratulations on another season. I hope you guys have a great championship experience. Thanks, guys, for doing it. Appreciate it, and good luck to all the athletes out there competing because this is fun. It's a fun time of year. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Puck.
There they are, Todd Millis, John Manley, Chris Egan, our football playoff preview show here on pucksports.com. You can check it out on YouTube. Please subscribe there. Also, listen to it on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. As I mentioned before, always up at pucksports.com.